don't ask questions where it's easy for people just to say yes to. Like, you need to get to, like, the real kernel of, like, their actual selves in the job interview and, like, what they're like to work with.
Sure, strategies, sweet success.
So we are back. Christine's back with us very much. She's back with her from her voyages. You know,
I
she took a
survived I
good
survived Chicago traffic, so I'm very grateful to be here and in front of the camera and speaking to you all right now.
I was gonna say you took a voyage across the Midwest. And I was like, that sounds either very romantic or very boring.
Wait for the mini series to come out. Like, yeah.
The mini series, The Voyages Across the Midwest.
I know. Christine's voyages across the Midwest.
Oh, okay. With
I would watch
Christine
it.
in it, that would be actually entertaining. Like, I was thinking, like, if somebody actually made, like, a voyage across the Midwest, like, if that was the title of something on Netflix, it wouldn't be a happy, that's, like, fun docu.
You know, I always try and make it entertaining, at least somewhat, even driving in Chicago traffic. And there was one point, the funniest point of the whole thing, because I'm a very careful driver. Okay, I like to read every sign. I'm like, I want to know where I'm at, what I'm doing, who's around me, situational awareness. Like I'm not going to be the cause of the act. So I'm at a red light, and here in Springfield, at a red light, if you're going to turn right, you can go right on red. It's like a saying, right on red, right? Right on red. So I'm in Chicago and I'm at the stoplight and I'm looking around at all the signs and I've got the passenger with me and she's helping me read the signs too. And then she goes, "Okay, Christine, this sign says no right turns on red." And I repeated and I said, "No right turns on red." Got it. And then I turned right
Oh, what?
and everybody
And your autopilot took over and made the wrong choice.
I even said it back to her. I was like, "No right turns on red." Got it.
Oh my gosh.
Car just exploded, but it was fine. It was fine. We were actually on our way to go see the Gallagher House, which is where they filmed Shameless.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's
Oh.
I still do the photo. I'm sorry. We did some photos.
Oh, when you said Gallagher House, like, I was thinking, like, the guy who used to, like, sledgehammer watermelons, like that Gallagher, and I was like, "That's nice, yeah, yeah, I'd go see that." Yeah.
Maybe also a Chicago native, but this one was around the show Shameless.
Uh, I I don't know much about Shameless, admittedly, but I do know something about Gallagher, the guy who smashes watermelons. But, like, after, like, he sold his act to his brother, and so, like, there's, like, many there's and his brother sold it to somebody else, so I guess there's many different Gallagher acts, and it's just, like, a costume that they put on, and I found that I forget when I found that out, but I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah."
He created a legacy
He did, yeah, yeah.
for him.
On the flip side, you have Bob Ross, and there's a reason I don't buy Bob Ross merch because,
Oh
like,
yeah, did you see the documentary on what was it, like Vice or something?
well, I knew about this before the documentary, but I did see that documentary, but yeah, like, Bob Ross's image is not owned by well, obviously, Bob Ross is dead. It's owned by, like, some company, and, like, who license out his images, and they get all the money from it, like, his son doesn't have any rights to his father's image or his legacy, which is kinda crazy, you know? So, yeah, before we started recording, there's an unreleased episode of solo me, going through Google Business, and that's, like, probably the hardest part of, like, producing a podcast, like, I will have to go back and, like, re-listen to everything to make sure, like, before it goes out, like, all the edits are done and in place, and I'm listening to myself on 2x speed, and so make it a little bit less painful, take up a little bit less time, and sometimes I'm like, "What the just like,
I never saying that.
yeah.
I
I
listen to
listen
myself. I listen to calls all the time. Like I'm constantly listening to people talking and it never bothers me. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's your call. It's your call. It is a scientific fact. People hate listening to themselves. I feel like I have this really high pitched nasally voice. And people are like, yeah, you do. No, when you hear it, you're just like, whoa,
is that me? Yeah, I don't get it with my voice as much, but I get it with like seeing myself on camera. I'm like, that's me, ain't it? That's fucked up. I had no idea. That's what I look like. Okay. I get it now. So yeah, you have to get over like both of like hearing yourself and seeing yourself. And with a lot of the business owners, just to swing this into like what I do, my job or whatever. Like I'm always like coaching people on making content, like and how to make content, like recording TikTok videos and things like that. And it's so hard. But like you always got to find the time to like sit down and record. And I say that every time I sit down to record a podcast, it's important that if you're running a business that you have to make content for your marketing and for your business. You keep a planner still?
Oh, I have so many planners.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where did you have one specifically that you like or
So, okay, I'm very much a written, like you very much a written person, but I also understand and I respect that there's a lot of people in the digital sphere, and I also work in a technology business. So I have a OneNote that has a calendar on it, and I have calendars for my PTO, and that also allows my leaders to put their PTO in as well. And then I also have a OneNote calendar for when my front line flexes their schedule. So I have scheduling calendars digitally that everybody can see every single day. I will also post what my daily agenda looks like to my team so they can see what my daily agenda looks like. That's about the extent that and then I have my Google Calendar for like my personal stuff. That one is pretty self-manageable, but that's where the digital part stops. I also I have a weekly planner, which is the weekly projection. And then I have at the bottom of the notes section what things that are coming up later in the month are going to be. And then I have a daily planner. So with those big important dates, like those events, then in my daily planner, I kind of like map out, okay, first 15 minutes, I'm going to be doing that. Next 15 minutes, I got to run over here and do that, and kind of like my day is mapped out in like 15-minute to 30-minute to an hour increments.
damn. I have which I have the Google Calendar, my personal and my work calendar. And I actually have an executive assistant, Glenda, who manages my calendar. And I kind of say I only say this to myself because I don't really have anyone to say it to, but like whatever's on my calendar is not my business. Like I just show up for shit and Glenda like handles it. And honestly, it's like a huge relief. Like I started this business like 2 years ago. And like up until then, like I worked for somebody else, like another company. I always managed my own calendar. And it was never hard. Like it was never a big deal. Like if something had to get rescheduled, I rescheduled it. But like at a certain point, like because I think I mentioned this before, I'm a fractional CMO for 5 clients. Like it's just freaking hard to handle. And then like it's not just like finding times to schedule things. It's like, oh, you got to move something around. So you got to email 6 people and coordinate with those people about when to. Anyway, so like she handles that for me, and I don't have to think about it, and it's been like a huge relief. And then like I have it's called a Remarkable tablet. I go to conferences a lot, and a lot of people have the Remarkable tablet, so I know a lot of people know about them, but maybe not everyone does. But it's like a tablet specifically for like writing and note taking and things like that. All it does is like it's not like an iPad. And I have that and I have a planner uploaded on that I use that I keep up to date like basically every day. But I can't claim to have my time down to every 15 minutes.
No, it is very hard. This has been years of practice, many trial and lots of error. Lots and lots of error.
Lots of try. For me, like I had a schedule like for each of my clients. I have a meeting with like the attorney, and then I usually meet like separately with their team, like whoever's on their marketing team. Have like one meeting, and I try to keep those as like efficient as possible because like everyone has something. And I mean, ultimately, like if I meet with everyone for like 30 minutes each week, like, that's, like, most of my week filled up, so I have to make that time, like, super efficient, and then, like, also I have to block off time because, like, I'm doing work as a fractional CMO for my clients, but I also have to block off time for, like, my company, and, like and I think we talked about this in a previous podcast, but I've started up, like, a mastermind group for marketing directors, And so now, like, I have to put in time for that. And so I have 2 hours of time each day blocked off where I'm just working on Shark Cookie or I'm just working on the mastermind group. And like, I really need that because like, otherwise, like, I would just be doing work for everyone else and just
Well,
meeting with other
you
people.
have to have your week and what you're capable of doing. And ambition does not define your or it doesn't dictate your capability, and your capability doesn't dictate your ambition. Person like me, I am a yes person. I'm just like, "Yes, give it to me. Give it to me. Load my plate." And then my plate becomes so full that I'm just like, "I don't have enough hours in my day to do all this. Why did I say yes to all this?" And then I
Yeah.
gotta let somebody down, and then I disappoint somebody, and then I get a little, upset at the process. Like, "Oh, it's not me, it's the process." And then whenever you look a little introspectively and you're like, "Gotta say no to some stuff." You gotta know what your fixed items are, and that actually ties directly into what we're gonna talk about today, is what makes up that marketing department and those skill sets, time management, and knowing what you absolutely have to get done, what your top priorities are, and mapping them out, how much time it's gonna take you. Knowing where those spots are in your day allows you to then know where your free moments are at, to then do the things you want to do, then do the things that make you rise above everybody else and where you actually get to, exhibit the best parts of your skill set.
So Christine's right. The main topic for the podcast, she's right about the time management thing for sure. And then she's also right. We're talking about marketing departments in this podcast. And so what we're going to actually do with this podcast is we're going to split it into two because we're talking to two different sets of people. In one episode, we're going to be talking to the law firm owner and talking to them about what goes into a marketing department, like past, present, future. Like, so past is going to be like what you need, what you're looking for when you're hiring somebody for your marketing department. Not all law firms are there yet. Some of them, maybe you've already hired somebody and, so this is only like a few people who probably need like advice on how to hire a marketer. But like, I had an example from one of my clients recently where we've been through a few marketers here of late where the hiring process has kind of let us down and we've had to hire somebody, fire somebody, hire somebody, fire somebody twice in the last like 6 months. And it's not super fun.
That
So
gets
even if you,
expensive too.
yeah, yes, it does. And it gets expensive and it's time consuming and it's also heartbreaking. Like that's the thing for me. Like, and I mean, it sounds a little dumb, but every time like you bring on a new marketer, you bring on a new employee, you're just so excited. And you're like, okay, this is somebody that I can connect with. Somebody, you're going to be spending it when if you hire somebody and let's say they're a full time employee, like they're going to be a part of your life 40 hours a week for hopefully the next like 2 or 3 years at least, right? And so, it's as close as you can get as being a friend without being a friend, I guess. And so you look for somebody who's going to mesh well with you, mesh well with your team, who's going to be excited about the job. And, it just sucks when it falls through, I guess. And you just realize, like, oh, this person wasn't the right fit. Like dating. I always use the dating metaphor.
We could break
About we're episode or one of these episodes going to be for the law firm owner. The other one's going to be for the marketer. And so we'll be talking about the same set of things, but from the marketer's perspective. So like how to get a job. Like if you're into legal marketing or you're not into legal marketing and you want to get started, like how do you get a job? Like how do you get through those interviews? And then also some stuff about like present, like what you should be doing day to day at a law firm, what your task list should look like and what it should not look like. And then finally, I think the last part is the future. And so I think we're going to talk about KPIs here. We're going to talk about how marketing department grows over time and what I've seen. And so that's what we'll be covering these next two episodes, like the law firm marketing department and trying to cover it from those two perspectives. Just to introduce you guys to the topic, give you guys sense of what we'll be talking about. We're going to start, I guess let's start with the law firm owner and then like hiring, because I think both of us have a good bit to say about this. And we talked about me having to let go of a marketer recently and it wasn't super fun.
So let me
So
ask you this. Let me ask you, what would you say a law firm is looking for in the ideal candidate?
So if we're talking about somebody who's full-time, what they're doing is marketing, the main thing I'm looking for is the ability to write. Because and even like ChatGPT and large language models, like writing is a huge important part of marketing. And it's not like you have to be like you don't have to be like super, super good at marketing or I'm sorry, super, super good at writing. You don't have to be like William Faulkner or whatever. You don't have to be super creative, but you do have to be good at conveying a clear point. And like not everyone is like really there. And I'm not saying all marketers have to be good writers because there are certainly like there are video editors who don't necessarily have to be good writers. There are people who they're primarily what they primarily do in marketing is more relationship building, referral building, events marketing. You don't have to be a good copywriter if you're going to be like focused on any of those. But if you are a law firm and you're looking to hire potentially who's going to be employee number one, marketer number one for your law firm, they need to know how to write. They need to know how to write persuasively, compellingly, and to write well, like know the basic grammar rules. So it's really about like there's just so much writing involved in marketing. Like if you want to post a description on social media, you need to be able to write. And if you're going to publish a YouTube video, you need to be able to create a title and create a description. And like you may be thinking like, well, why do I need a strong writer? There's ChatGPT, there's large language models. The way I like to kind of talk about that, I mean, you have law firm A who has a marketer who's good at some things but not good at writing, and they have ChatGPT. And then you have law firm B, which has a marketer who's really good at marketing and copywriting, and also has ChatGPT. The large language models really raise like the floor of good marketing, not necessarily the ceiling. And so like everyone can write at this point as well as ChatGPT. But really like ChatGPT right now, as far as like marketing copy goes, can't like match like a good marketing copywriter. It's just not there yet. And who knows when it will be. I mean, that's the big question with AI. I think everyone assumes like it'll continue to like improve at the same trajectory that it's been like growing here of late. But there's no guarantee that these models will get any better at copywriting with time and in what like timeline they'll do it. That's kind of a tangent. But yeah, for me, like if you're looking to hire a marketer for your law firm, like the number one thing is writing for me.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, especially if you are the firm itself and you're looking at it from the perspective of the firm. If you're like, okay, well, how do I go like narrow the pool down? Everybody wants a job. How do I go narrow the pool down a little bit? So what would be a platform, or how would you even put that requirement out there?
So what I've always done in the past is require a cover letter and like require, I guess, in quotes, because like if you go to Indeed to post like a job description and I don't think you can say like a cover letter is required, but what I typically do is I'll post a job and it's for a marketing job. And then like the very first like line, like the first thing that they read, will say something like cover letter is required, you know, to be considered for employment. If you don't submit a cover letter, your application won't be considered. And that's like line one. And then, like, usually at the very end, we'll give them some more information. Sometimes I don't tell them what they need to write about. It's just that they need to submit a cover letter. Sometimes I tell them, like, hey, submit a cover letter and write about, whatever. And 90% of people like won't submit a cover letter. So that just immediately whittles down the pool to like the 10% of people who do. And funny enough, like ChatGPT did not change at all. Like, so I've hired marketers before ChatGPT where we required a cover letter and 90% of people didn't submit a cover letter, 10% did. And then after ChatGPT, it's literally the same exact number. It didn't
That's
affect me.
crazy.
Yeah.
You would
Crazy.
think that people would be like way more like apt to doing it because it's so much easier to do.
I you'd think so. It's weird. It's like if you're the type of person who will apply for a job and submit a cover letter, you're gonna do that regardless. I think. I don't know. I was surprised as well, honestly, like, after ChatGPT came out and, like, pretty much everyone knew about it, and then I had to post for to hire for a marketer, I was like, "Oh, everyone's gonna submit a cover letter, this isn't gonna work anymore." And then nobody did. I mean, except for the 10% of people who usually did, so, kinda funny.
Wow. And and whenever you're a firm and that's something that you're kind of like basing a very high criteria on is your writing ability, that would be the perfect place to go do it. It's like, "Hey, how did you write your cover letter?" And even giving little to almost, there's not no direction. There is the direction of write a cover letter. And I mean, obviously the content is kind of assumed, but to have it more general and like up to the person applying on what the content's going to look like and how they're going to structure it, that's a really good way to tell if you're looking at the right candidate or not.
I ask them this in the job interview too, like, I usually say, like, "Hey, like, if you're gonna write if I sell give you a pen and say, like, 'Hey, write 500 words on any topic,' I just need them to you're just gonna sit here and write 500 words on this topic in front of me." Just try to give them, like, the constraint of, like, "Hey, you have an hour, and you have to write 500 words, and it has to sound good, and it has to be on a topic that you know really well. What's the topic gonna be?" And
Plants.
you would think that I mean, yeah, for somebody like you, plant, like, I mean, it really doesn't for me, I'm not looking for the right answer, I'm just looking for somebody who's like, "Can write 500 words on something, no big deal, because it's that important. It's that important to marketing."
That's a really see, and we were saying earlier, I think we might have said it before we started recording, but having something in the interview process. So part of what part one is going to be about the from the firm's perspective, interviewing like putting the requisition out there and then interviewing for the job. So I think this falls under that umbrella, but you always want some kind of like a curveball. You want the applicant to think that they know where the train is going, and then you want to take them off track for a moment. That way you can elicit that real response, that genuine, "How do you think on your feet?" It's not like you're trying to trick anybody necessarily, but you are trying to get an honest, genuine reaction, not something that has been thought out, kind of pre-rehearsed, something that they've kind of gone over in their head a bunch of times, trying to get them a little off guard. So doing something like that, great way to get a real response from them.
And I love that advice, and I wrote a LinkedIn post over the weekend because, like, I mean, I've seen a lot of law firms do this, even though it's the type of thing where I give this advice and I kinda get the reaction like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I need that." Where you'll tell people like, "Hey, like, don't ask questions where it's easy for people just to say yes to." Like, you need to get to, like, the real kernel of, like, their actual selves in the job interview and, like, what they're like to work with. So don't just ask the question and, like, yes, and then accept that as their true response. And that was what I wrote a LinkedIn post about because, like, nobody will think that they do that, but everyone does that all the time. Like, I see it in job interviews, like, "Hey, we love our TikTok account. Are you, are you interested in social media?" "Yes." And it's like, "Duh, of course they said yes. You just said we wanted somebody who does TikTok and they want a job because they wanna make money, so of course they'll say yes." Like, you have to, like, ask them questions and ask them to give you details and to get people off their own mental script. Because like, everyone anticipates, like, what's the one that like, the quintessential, like, interview question, like, "Why you?" And "Why you?" Like, yeah, you wanna get a like, "Why you?" Everyone has rehearsed that one, and then it's like, it's
Where do you
always like
see yourself in 10 years?
yeah, that's a good one.
I
I'm
like to
trying
say
to think.
retired on a beach.
Retired on a beach for sure. Like
I like 10
networking, married
years,
to a
like, yeah.
millionaire. Yeah. But it's something about like so like my one of my favorite interview questions, which I stole from somebody else who's better at hiring than me. But it's like, what's the best and the worst thing that an employer would say about you? And it's a better variation of like, what are your weaknesses? That is the one I was trying to think of, but I just think of like, what are your
Oh, yeah, what
weaknesses?
are your
Yeah.
strengths? What are your weaknesses?
Yeah.
"Oh, I care too much."
Oh, I work too hard.
"Oh, I'm just so good, I just, sometimes it can get the better of me."
Yeah. I'm a perfectionist. My bosses say I'm a perfectionist. But those are such the common. Like, by the way, this isn't the part of the episode of the podcast series where we're giving advice to like if you want a marketing job, like and but I'll just go ahead and say it. If you want a marketing job, like don't bullshit. All right. Like people in HR positions, like they've heard it all. Like they've heard what you're about to say. And because it's like it's the easy rehearse thing, it's the internet advice, reframing yourself in a positive way. Like we've heard it all. Like if you've hired, you've heard it all. Like say something different. I had lunch with somebody recently who, when I moved out to Virginia, they actually hired me for the first job I ever got out here. And they were telling me, they're like, I hired you because, and I don't remember this at all, but they were like, in your cover letter, you talked about Ludacris. I wrote something about how Ludacris was my favorite rapper at the time. And that actually got me that job. Nice. I don't remember that at all. But I do love Ludacris, so it's accurate. But like, I don't remember why I put that in the cover letter, but evidently, like, he remembered it 10 plus years later and says that that's why. Job kind of cracks me up. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you gotta make yourself distinguish and like stand out in some little way while it's still appropriate, and that's a fine line to balance. And that's why, as an interviewer, like somebody who does the interviews for my company, I love to have that moment at the very end where, I mean, you know, we've done this enough times now. People kind of like see me and they can get like, oh yeah, you've got that personality. And then I completely change it at the very end. And then I will ask them something that they really have to like take a step back and go, oh, oh, whoa, how do I answer this? Because I want them to think they've got me figured out. Because the more that they think that, the more thrown off they're gonna be when I flip it, the very end. And I always do that through a role play. And I do it so well now that I actually have to give a disclaimer. And I'm like, okay, full disclaimer, I'm about to turn into somebody else. I'm like, okay, we're gonna just one the final question. It's a role play example. Full disclaimer, I'm about to turn into somebody else. Are you ready? They're like, yeah, I got it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be this really upset customer. Here we go. And then I give them this like the role play example where I come in hot. Like, what are you doing? This is the worst company and the worst experience. I hate you and I hate everything you stand for. You give a genuine emotional response to that. Go. And they're like, oh, I'm looking for a very, very specific thing. Especially you mentioned earlier those yes and no questions. We always ask questions that say, give me a very specific situation, behavior, and outcome. And then we ask a question that's general enough where they have to recount an instance, an example, something from their past experience that highlights the outcome. Because yeses and nos only go so far. I want you to prove to me that you know how you got there. Which parts did you control? What did you have to keep in check? What did you have to do differently? What were the challenging parts to get you to that positive outcome? And if you understand the process and the steps it takes to recreate that outcome that was so good in that example, that's where I'm going to trust that you can then do that with my company.
That's really good. I love coming into job interviews with those kind of questions like set up where you're asking people like, don't just, tell me a story and give me these details. Like in marketing, I see a lot of resumes where people talk about how they've set marketing strategy. Like I've set the marketing strategy for XYZ. And like depending on the role that I'm hiring for, like if it's more of like a marketing director, like more senior role, like I want to know like how you contributed to the strategy. I want to know the details. Like so, go into the interview like as the business owner, like not just to say like, okay, like have you set marketing strategy before? Yes, great, box ticked. It's like, tell me about the marketing strategy that you created. Tell me how it was implemented, and then tell me the outcomes that the company saw from that. And get more details.
So much, it's so much more because somebody can give you an answer that sounds good, but whenever you piece it apart, you could even go into, well, why was that situation even important to address at all? Did they already have a marketing strategy that didn't work and you just revamped it? Or did you completely build it from scratch and you were coming in from the ground and building it up? So, like, why was the situation important to even ask for you to do that at all? Is it something that you already had built and you just kind of like, meh, 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 chat GPT a few items, change it, and then throw it out there? Or is it something that you put a lot of thought and effort? What were the challenges? What didn't work? What did you change? Did you launch it on the first go around, or did you have to revise it a few times? So then it's like, what behaviors did you bring people in, or was it just you on an island doing it all yourself? Did you make it teachable? Did you make this something where other people were able to easily come on board to? Or was it something that you just kind of held in your own little silo and nobody else was really privileged to it? And so whenever you left or moved on, like you're trying to go to a different job now, obviously you're interviewing. What are they going to do with that? Where's that marketing strategy now? Is it long term? Is it short term? So there's so many more details that you have to get because that initial answer is never good enough.
So, and I'll tell you a quick story, and then we'll move on because we're talking about this twice. So we're going to talk about hiring from the business owner's perspective. We're going to wrap this up, and then we're going to talk about our other two marketing department topics. But I do want to tell a story really quick because it's interesting and it highlights like why you need to get details from your candidate about what they've done at their previous and not just take their resumes at face value. Like, and then, I mean, this might sound crazy, but like when I'm hiring, like I barely look at resumes. Like I look at them a little bit, but like I don't actually study resumes. Most of the information I get from the interviews. Because resumes, it's so easy. It's so easy just to like stretch experience. Like we've all done it. Like we've all written resumes and had to like make like a really simple job sound like cool and complicated. And I mean, oddly, if they're good at marketing, then they're really good at making seem like more complicated than it was. But what was I gonna say? Okay, so the story I was gonna talk about. So there is this gal who got hired for a marketing role, and like she talked quite a bit about how she created a social media TikTok strategy for her previous employer. And she talked about like all this information that she put into it and all this work that she put into it. And then that was like her employer had 0 TikTok, and then she created the whole TikTok marketing strategy. And it was, like, really impressive, but she was actually coming in and interviewing for a job that wasn't marketing, it was, like, a paralegal role. And but because, like, she was a paralegal who had this, like, marketing experience, so to speak, she was earmarked and ultimately hired because that kind of put her above all the other candidates. You know, all the other candidates were simply paralegals, whereas she was a paralegal with marketing experience who could potentially help us grow TikTok. And so we, like, the law firm hired her. This is one of my clients. Worked with her for a very brief time, and a couple things became pretty clear. Like, one, her duties as a paralegal didn't give her enough bandwidth to do TikTok marketing, like, one. That was the big important one. And so, like, I don't know if we'll talk about this again later in this podcast, but, like, if you're bringing on marketing employees, like, it's always better if they're a dedicated marketing employee. You want them to be a marketing. You don't want them to be marketing and paralegal, marketing and intake. But, you know, a lot of people try to shoehorn 2 roles into one, and it happens. But anyway, so didn't have enough bandwidth to do the marketing stuff. And then the other part of it is, like, her TikTok marketing strategy, it was all in theory. So it was like a proposal developed for this previous business. We went and looked back at their account. Like, they had a TikTok account, but the only videos that were posted on there were obviously ones made at the same time the account was started. So she probably did create a TikTok marketing strategy, and she probably did implement some of it, and she probably was truly like the acorn that would eventually become this company's like TikTok whatever marketing platform. But like as far as like how much work she put into it, how much expertise, I mean, she created a TikTok account. She made 3 videos. And, you know, this is a very small business that didn't have any presence beforehand. Not knocking her, you know, God bless her for doing something. You know, so many marketers come into this space and do nothing. So she did something, but it wasn't the experience wasn't as impressive. And if we probably, or we again, like my client, if they had known like all that went into like what she had done before, she probably wouldn't have been earmarked for the paralegal role. So just to tell a quick story really quick about making sure it's like the right experience.
Well, that ties into what you're gonna end up doing day to day, because if you're the firm, you gotta make sure that the people that are on their best behavior, giving you their shiniest example of what effort they've put in. They may not be highlighting the result of that effort, but, hey, this is effort that I'm willing to put in. Then you go to your day to day. And then you gotta make sure that the person that is selling themselves in that moment is a right fit for your day to day, because anybody can sit down and check boxes. Like, tell
Yeah.
me what to do. Okay, done, 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 done. But do you know, like, what the dynamic with your team structure is gonna look like? Are you able to work together? Are you able to be more efficient by getting out of the way all of those little interpersonal issues that could cause people to get distracted and lose focus and have to take longer to accomplish tasks? All of those little emotional intelligence factors, like somebody could have a wealth of technical experience, but when it comes to working with each other and working on a team, oh, they're terrible, horrible. And you're going to spend so much of your time and effort and resources trying to keep them at bay and mitigate the personal conflicts and the people issues than you'll ever get as a result of the investment that you put into hiring this person. So it's like, is this person really right for our day to day?
Well, and something that I see a lot is like we law firm owners will get like a template job description, or they'll have ChatGPT write a job description for like a marketing admin, marketing coordinator. I mean, just imagine that, you go to ChatGPT, like act as a human resources expert, create a job description for a marketing coordinator. You look at it, personalize it, edit it, post it on Indeed. You find somebody, you hire them. Something that I see really often is like those templated job descriptions sometimes are a really poor reflection of what that marketer will actually be doing for the law firm. So, like something like that, like a template is going to mention like search engine optimization and website administration. And for the most part, like my clients and a lot of law firms, their SEO is outsourced. Like they have an or search engine optimization vendor handling their content, handling their website. And so like the person that you potentially hire who's not that vendor, they're going to come in and they're going to be like, this is an SEO role where I'm going to be doing search engine optimization. But really like that may be like the smallest part, yeah, they're doing some of it, but like for the most part, most that's handled by somebody else, and they're just there as support, or they're just there to publish like one article a month. It's not like a huge part of their job. And so, like, you use job templates to attract candidates, and then those candidates quickly become unhappy because they're not doing what they thought they would be doing, which is it's a bummer. It's freaking, I remember, well, I'm trying to think if I've ever been hired for a job where the job wasn't what I expected. I know I did do that thing where I interviewed with Cutco, and I like was in like 3 hours of meetings before I realized like, what do we sell? Oh, knives. Like, bye. I don't know. Yeah, I'm out. I'm out. I don't think, well, I do know like I've been disappointed. Like I remember a few times like seeing something listed on a job description and like show up and like that's not what this job is at all. And it's frustrating. So like it's frustrating for them. And then it's also like frustrating for the law firm owner because you end up hiring somebody interested in something else and it's not marketing for your law firm, you know.
Well, that's a perfect segue into the last point from the firm's perspective is retention and growth. Like if you're constantly trying to get that churn down and get somebody permanent who's actually good at what they're trying to do, you're not going to have any opportunity to grow and expand on the foundation that you built if you're constantly having to rebuild it.
Yeah. So before we segue, I want to mention as far as like how a marketing department for a law firm, how that should work and what it looks like day to day. And really like, this is like, I feel like this is the topic that we could also make in its own episode because there's a lot that a law firm marketing department can do day to day to attract leads, get more clients, to further their brand image. the kind of the very general terms, like what I tell lawyers is like 50% of a job, a law firm marketing job, is going to be repeatable tasks. These are going to be things that we do each day, each week, things like sending an email newsletter, posting on social media, looking at this report. That's like going to be half the job. The other half of the job is going to be projects that you work on once and then you finish, you put aside and you move on to the next one. But let's talk about community marketing. Like let's say like the project is giving away coats. Like you're collecting coats to give away to the needy. One of my clients does this every year. And so it's a December program, but we actually have to start like thinking about it in August, weirdly enough. Because you want to get the coat in time to be able to give the coats to people in need, and people need them in the winter. So it does no good to collect them in December because people are already cold. Anyway,
And
so
people are clearing out their closets in the summertime, and people are like, I don't need this coat. They're more willing to give up their good in the off season.
But that's a project that your marketer will need to work on that they can't, work on every single day. Like if you're a lot of lawyers like are very checklist oriented. They want to know exactly what their marketer is working on at all times. They want to be able to hand somebody a checklist and say, do this every day, and this is marketing. And some of the, again, like that's 50% of the job, but like your marketer also needs time to work on that collecting coat or reaching out to this vendor or something that's going to be an initiative we do, for 3 months and, maybe never again, or maybe again in 6 years. Or maybe you have short-term goals, or like a digital PR campaign is another good one. Like you're going to be doing that for like 3 months and then rest and not do it again for, 6 months. So, part of the job is routine. Part of the job is going to be these one-off marketing projects. So just if you are looking for more resources on like what does a marketing department do, what are we doing each week, each month, each quarter kind of thing. Not to sound too salesy, like I didn't mean to go here with this kind of talk, but like if you go to my website and you go to my services page, like and you click on my fractional CMO service page, I think there's a list on there that actually breaks down like what I do each week, each month, each quarter for my clients. And that'll give you a good idea of what the repeatable marketing tasks are that your marketer should be working on. And for the most part, like, I mean, this is geared towards, we've been talking about like law firms with like one marketer, which is going to be quite a few of our listeners. But we're also working on like my company, like a marketing department blueprint as far as like what staff, like if you have like a huge marketing department, like there are a few law firms that I work with where they don't just have like a CMO, they also have a CMO, marketing director, a digital marketing specialist, social media marketing specialist. If you're interested in what those kind of departments look like, I guess stick around, follow me, whatever, go to my website. I'll have that out eventually. It's not ready yet. Yeah. Like and subscribe and wherever you're listening, I'll talk about it at some point. Okay, so
you talked about KPI. I think that's also extremely important to be very forthright and forthcoming about what your KPI is going to be. As an employer, as the firm, you got to know what your inspection pieces look like and be very transparent with that. Because anybody applying for a job, if they just see the general description, they could interpret that as being like, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that really well. But then if you're inspecting for a very specific metric and saying, we're going to know if you're effective based on the result of this metric right here, that could be a huge game changer.
That is so important. So a lot of people coming into marketing jobs like to think they're going to be the office artist. And so like they're going to be the ones who get to design how pretty the flyers is or whatever. I heard actually somebody call them, and this sounds kind of mean, but I love it. It's swag bitches. It's the people who like look for cool swag ideas and, for the law firm or for the business or whatever. And that's marketing. And I mean, that is marketing, or swag is marketing. It's a part of it. But most people think like, oh, I'm going to be the office artist. If you're a 7-figure law firm and you're spending big, if you're spending like $50K a month, I mean, that's your marketing budget, that's your advertising budget. Like you're keeping an eye on how much you're spending and what is producing. And so, yeah, if you let marketers know, like, hey, this isn't the office artist position, we're going to be tracking on revenue, total leads, total qualified leads. I think a lot of people applying who've never done legal marketing before, but are applying for a legal marketing job, that might give them pause. Because as soon as you tell people like you're going to be measured on effectiveness, they start to say like, "Oh, shit, like, is this actually a job that I want? Like, do I want to market for a law firm? Would I be happier at a different type of company?" I think for a lot of people, they'll say yes because legal marketing is, like, super competitive. It's one of the more competitive industries in the nation right now. And so, like, unless you're working for a law firm that just, like, doesn't care about their marketing and how much they're spending, you need to set those KPIs for your marketer, like, 1, and then let people know, like, talk to them in the hiring process and say, like, "We evaluate our marketing department based on these numbers because this is what's important to us." And, like, when people realize that it's results driven like that, I think a lot of people kinda step back.
We do something similar. I was talking earlier about how I have like those like curveball moments. And one of those moments that I had to tiptoe in a little earlier in the interview is I'll say something like one of our biggest values is our experience with our customers. Have you ever can you describe a time where you effectively gauged and confirmed that you gave someone a good experience? And they'll say, "Oh, yeah, yeah, this person, they did this, and then they gave me a kudos, or they called back to tell me that I was great." And I'm like, "Okay, awesome." So if that was something that happened in the moment, is there a long-term measure that you can also base this off of? Or was that a one-off? And so they'll be like, "Oh, no, that happened all the time." I'd be like, "Okay, was there a metric? Was there something that you were graded on? Something that you can speak to, or is it all just the here and there random in the moment experiences?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, because you're only gonna hear that from the ones that liked you. The ones that didn't like you are probably you're not never hearing from again, unless it was bad enough they come back and complain." But, for the most part, a lot of people just think, "Oh, this person gave me a compliment one time. I'm good at this." No, not so great. Not as much as you think you are.
Well, and what's funny is, like, a lot of I work for lawyers, I'm coaching lawyers, I'm talking to lawyers about marketing. Lawyers know, like, how to ask questions and well, I mean, most of them do. And
I hope
they
so.
under yeah, you really hope so. They understand human psychology, they get all this, they're hearing us talk about this and saying like, "Yeah, I know." But, like, what I also know is, like, I've seen enough, lawyers and law firms, like, they start interviewing somebody for a job and this person, like, is picking, like, most of their boxes, and they just get so excited, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so happy to be a part of the team." And, like, it's one thing when you're corporate, like, when you're huge, like, one person, like, hiring them and letting them go in a few weeks probably isn't as impactful as, like, if you're a law firm. And so, like, these lawyers, for lack of a better term, they fall in love, hiring is like dating. They fall head over heels way too fast, and they've already, like, made somebody, like, the head of their marketing department that they actually haven't worked with, and they haven't verified their experience. And then you realize, like, okay, like, this wasn't the right fit. This wasn't a good relationship to get started here. And there's so many ways like it can go wrong. Just don't fall in love. Like, do your due diligence, like, ask them hard questions. And, like, also just because, like, you're an attorney and not a marketer, like, ask questions about the experience that you're seeing on paper because, like, we are marketers, like, we are good at making things that, we're good at, like, hyperbole, I guess, like, making something look really impressive when maybe it's not so impressive, like, talking about the time we launched a podcast when maybe all we did is set up a Libsyn account or something, so it stretching the truth a little bit, we all do it in the resume setting. You gotta really poke holes into that because, like, you do want somebody with marketing experience, real marketing experience.
I love how you said you gotta poke holes in it. We call that poking holes in the boat, because when you start poking holes in the boat, that boat starts to sink. That's when the real person comes out. What do you do in a crisis? You do not want to discover what that person does when a crisis is actually happening. You want to simulate a crisis in that moment and see how they respond to it when they're not expecting it. because that's going to be their honest, genuine reaction.
Yeah. And if you're talking about marketer, like for the intake teams, like honestly, that's a great exercise. If you're hiring somebody to do like intakes at a law firm, like you need to challenge them on the kind of conversation. Cause like I feel like some of the intake teams will come in and feel like they know how a conversation's going to go, like when they start picking up the phone at a law firm. But like from my experience and the calls that I've listened to, people calling law firms and law firm intakes that I've listened to, so many people are just like ready to info dump. And like that's one of the bigger challenges like I see intake team dealing with is somebody calling a law firm and just like telling their life story and like leading up to like the information about their case. And so like where I've had to coach like these teams is like how to like get people back on track and and I'm not very good at it. That's not what I do. I don't do it, but I try to like tell them like, look, we gotta like derail their train a little bit because we do have to get them onto our script. And so you have to take control of the conversation. And like if you're interviewing for an intake person and you're just telling them like, okay, like, are you good on the phone? Yes. Like a more specific question and be like, a lot of people call their law firm and like to tell very long, complicated stories about their car accident. What are some strategies you would use to make sure the conversation stays on track? Get some more detailed, just get more detail.
Yeah, describe a situation where you were able to effectively redirect a long-winded customer and get back on track. Something a little bit more concise. I love that example too because yeah, everybody always thinks like, oh yeah, I'm good at this.
So when is a law firm big enough to have a marketing team? So like I think like a lot of the law firms I work with have like a lot of people start like everyone starts DIY where you're the business owner and you're marketing on your own. Now, most people who are working with me have kind of gotten past that because if you're reaching out and hiring somebody for marketing, probably not DIY anymore. And a lot of them will first start out by hiring a marketing vendor, like an SEO vendor. And then from there, we kind of graduate to where we're hiring like a partial marketer. And, this is something where we already talked about like law firm intakes before, but where me and you could probably get into some more like details, like law firm intake role and how it like collaborates with marketing. But a lot of law firms will start out where they have the dedicated well, not a dedicated, but they have a marketer and that person also does intake where they're also on the phone. And so like they're probably doing like email newsletter and social media somewhat, and then they're answering the phone. And then from there, like usually after when they're there, they're at that point where they're like, they probably need to hire a marketer. Like a full-time marketer is if you have any kind of marketing budget, like if you have any kind of ad spend beyond like search engine optimization, you're doing any kind of paid ads, or if you're trying to like grow like referrals or try to get more referrals and grow your network, you really need like a marketer. Like it's hard to like get by without having like a full-time dedicated on-site person. Like I've seen people do this job remotely and it works. And but also like I also like having somebody like who can send out mailers and can coordinate with the in-house team. And so like for the most part, like we usually start like where we're DIY and just doing it ourselves, and then we hire a marketing vendor, and then we're usually making do with an intake slash marketer, and then we finally hire a marketer. And then like where the law firm goes beyond that, it kind of depends. Like I've seen law firms like develop into entire marketing departments where they have like that CMO, the marketing director. I think I mentioned that before. And then also, or they might just like network with a bunch of different vendors. Like they might have a PPC vendor, an SEO vendor, a display ads vendor, and they just break it up and they outsource it all. So that's generally how these law firm departments grow and what they look like over time.
It would make sense too, especially if you're just like starting up kind of like grassroots, like, mom and pop lawyer. If
Okay.
you start and you're kind of owning it all, because I have an entrepreneurship degree, and the way that we went about the whole idea of entrepreneurship is you got to be ready to put in the work. If you're the one that's starting the firm and you don't have it already budgeted out for a marketer, you're going to be owning it, or one of your core founders are going to be owning it. So then, I mean, in my perspective from an entrepreneurship lens, I would assume that once you can quantify that the result is bringing you more revenue than it costs to have that marketer, that employed person that you are paying, once the revenue exceeds the cost to maintain them, that's when you can have a permanent position. Before that, you're probably going to be owning it in house.
Yeah. You're gonna be owning it, doing it yourself. And like if you're a law firm, if you're a lawyer, you own a law firm and it's small, you're just starting out and you're doing a lot of the marketing yourself. Like best way you could spend your time is like kind of doing what you and I are doing right now, Christine, which is sitting down and recording and making content. Like so much of being a business owner these days is making content. And even like when you hire a marketer, like when you get to the point, like if you're a law firm owner and you've hired a marketer and you're doing like you're spending, 50K a month on ad budget, you're growing all the time, like you're still making content. You're still recording videos for TikTok. You're still writing for your newsletter. Maybe you'll have your marketer will ghostwrite for you, but definitely the video and the face stuff is hard to replace and you still need to make it. You still need to do it. And so, I mean, I said it before, like marketing for a law firm is kind of like it's like marketing for an influencer in a lot of ways because you're really marketing for in most cases, unless it's like a big firm like Morgan and Morgan or Allen and Allen, like you're marketing for a person. You're building their profile. It's not like marketing for Coca-Cola. So, it's if you're a law firm owner and you're growing your marketing department, one, you should grow it fast. Help like if you invest the right amount of time into it and the right amount of money, you should get pretty quickly to the place where you're hiring dedicated marketing employees, but also you never get out of making content. I'm very sorry to say.
That makes sense too, because especially like with the way that I'm not sure how quickly a law firm industry evolves. I would imagine that it would probably evolve at the same rate that laws change, and
Well, I
also what
mean,
technology allows you to.
how the legal industry has evolved, like marketing wise, like it's just so much digital. Like it's a lot of digital mastery and it's a lot of AI.
See, that would be the big thing that the industry, like the technology changed, and that probably was the biggest upheaval in the marketing realm of law firms and how they market themselves is the fact that the technology changed. So beforehand, you were maybe doing TV spots or newspaper ads or I don't know, maybe a magazine or whatever the case may be. And then Google comes along and that was a big upheaval. And so then you're marketing yourself on Google and you're getting yourself on the internet. And then AI comes along and now you're trying to get ahead of the algorithm and you're kind of trying to stay at the forefront. But I mean, and just in my perspective, and I'm the consumer here, it seems like the marketing strategy changes whenever the technology, the platform changes.
Yeah, but oddly enough though, like particular like the old stuff still works. Like the marketing stuff that we learned back in the day, the copywriting skills, with the a good magazine ad is gonna have a lot of the same parts as a good digital ad. And a good website is gonna have a lot of the same parts as a good parts as a business card or a well-performing
Or a
business
billboard.
card or a billboard or a TV ad. We still use billboards and we still use TV and TV is like still a huge part of it. But we also like there's a lot of relationship building in legal marketing. There's a lot of gift giving and tracking people's birthdays and referral, just trying to generate word of mouth referrals and that good old fashioned buzz, like just people talking about people. ChatGPT didn't change it that much.